Let's look at what is change and what is change management from a concept perspective. Change has been variously defined variously as becoming or making something different, to give a different position, course or direction, to make something radically different, and so on. Looking at change as giving a different direction carries with it implication of force, because you need something to change direction. So there is a force, and the adjectives used in the definition, becoming, making, etc., suggest that change is not an event, but it is a process. So there is a force, there is a process, and that is how change happens. Change management refers to all the activities involved in ensuring that the process of changing is properly guided or steered in the desired direction, and the energy required for the journey is constantly monitored and kept refueled so that the journey does not stop midway. You can look at the slide which should be on the screen now. So there is a force, there is a starting position, there is a desired or a target position, and then this process takes place. This is of course a rather simplistic way of looking at change and change management. The forces, for instance, are never of the same intensity. More often than not, the forces pull and push in different directions, because we are not talking about a single force, there are forces. So they pull and push in different directions and with different intensity, and once the change journey commences, one can only guess at the energy levels required to keep the momentum going in the desired direction. It's really not an exact science. Should the guess turn out wrong, the journey may end up with one being nowhere, neither where one started from nor where one desired to go, one wished to go. To better understand change and change management, one can look at some simple examples to which we can relate. For instance, students who are about to finish schooling. Let's say there are, let's take example of a student who is keen on a career in sport. So this student is about to finish schooling, and he has a desire to go into sports. Whether or not this student or such students succeed in pursuing their career goal, career dreams, depend on a lot of factors. Factors in the form of opinion of fellow students, the desire of their parents. This may either reinforce their career plan or cause it to be changed in favor of something else, perhaps cause it to change to something more traditional, like a career in engineering or medicine or accounting or whatever. So a change is never easy to understand, is never easy to diagrammatically represent through a few lines and arrows and boxes. Even from an organizational perspective, there are many external forces that induce change. If one were to list all the external factors, there will perhaps be too many. But one may look at a small set of forces, external forces. One such force is relevance. For instance, relevance of service or services provided by a government organization. When the services provided by the organization are viewed as not being relevant or useful by citizens, then the citizens, they become a force behind the change. The realization that the beneficiaries do not perceive the services as being useful will force the organization to rediscover and reorient itself. Reach, like relevance, reach is another force, another way of looking at the force. Suppose the service provided by the organization is relevant, but it is not reaching the right set of beneficiaries. It's out of reach of many, perhaps because it's too expensive, perhaps because there are accessibility issues. Then again, the citizens force the organization, the government organization, to scale up its services. And scaling up is a big process. Scaling up involves additional investment, it may involve organizational changes, relationships, reporting changes. So reach could be an external force. Respect. Do you think respect can be a force? I can immediately recall the example of the public distribution system from Chhattisgarh. One of the key objectives they had in mind when they came out with a completely new form of PDS delivery was portability. They wanted a consumer, a citizen, if the person was not happy with the ration shop, they wanted, under the new dispensation of PDS, they wanted the citizen to be able to go to any other ration shop anywhere in the vicinity or in the locality or in the city and obtain his quota of food grains. And one of the things they factored in was, if this shopkeeper was rude to me, then he is not treating me with respect. So he may give me the food grains that I'm entitled to, but he's rude to me. So I can go to a different ration shop, because portability was built into the e-governance solution. So respect can be a potent force. Quality of service, that's what we are referring to. So if poor quality of service is what citizens perceive, then that can be a force which will induce change. Competition. You might wonder, why should we even be talking about competition in the government domain? Do government services have any competition? Indeed they do. If you again recall from our earlier session on partnership, the business models and e-governance, we understood that the government looks very different today than it did many years ago. Many services are delivered in a partnership mode. For many services provided by government agencies, there are private sector alternatives. You only need to look at banking services. You only need to look at insurance services to understand what I'm trying to say. So competition can be a force. Externality. You may remember again from one of our earlier sessions what is meant by externality. Often there are significant costs to the environment. Let's take a simple example. Externality, we know, refers to effects of activities of one person or one group of people or one organization which are felt by unrelated third party. So that's an externality. And this can come in many forms. It can either be a positive or a negative externality in nature. A government organization involved in production of steel near a historical monument may cause such levels of pollution as to severely affect the monument. Examples are also to be found in leather processing, the tannery industry. Examples are to be found in marine products, shrimps, and so on. We know that a lot of these activities have unintended or unwanted consequences in the form of pollution. So when these reach certain levels, or the awareness of the citizens reach certain level as to the negative impact of these externalities, then they can serve as a force causing change in either the location or the content of the service. So we were looking at some examples of external forces that impact organizations, and anything which impacts an organization impacts the projects, the e-governance projects specific. There are also many internal forces. A lot of our discussion in this session is going to have to do with internal forces. Organizations, including and perhaps especially government organizations, are administered through meetings and committees and working groups. This conditions them to scan and discuss external factors. Most organizations don't find it very difficult to accept that external factors are important forces which bring about change. But introspection, looking within, looking at oneself, is however much more difficult for individuals as well as for organizations. And for this reason, the forces of change that lurk inside organization, the forces that are arguably more powerful and manifestly more invisible in comparison to the external ones, often do not reveal themselves readily, but they do exist. Break.